9 ships blasted off from Moon Base. Once in space, 8 of them formed a globe around the smallest. They held this formation all the way to Earth. The small ship displayed the insignia of an admiral, yet there was no living thing of any sort in her. She was not even a passenger ship, but a drone, a robot ship, intended for radioactive cargo. On this trip was carried nothing but a lead coffin and a Geiger counter that was never quiet. From the editorial after 10 years, film 38, 17th June 2009, in the archives of the New York Times. And now, let us begin. The Long Watch by Robert Heinlein. Johnny Dahlquist blew smoke at the Geiger counter. He grinned wryly and tried it again. His whole body was radioactive by now. Even his breath. The smoke of a cigarette could make the Geiger counter scream. How long had he been there? Time doesn't mean much on the moon. 2 days, 3, a week. He let his mind run back. The last clearly marked time in his mind was when the executive officer had sent for him, right after breakfast. Lieutenant Dahlquist reporting to the executive officer. Colonel Towers looked up. "Oh, Johnny Ezra. Sit down, Johnny. Cigarette?" Johnny sat down, mystified but flattered. He admired the Colonel Towers for his brilliance, his ability to dominate, and for his battle record. Johnny had no battle record. He had been commissioned on completing his doctor's degree in nuclear physics and was now junior bomb officer of Moon Base. The colonel wanted to talk politics, and Johnny was puzzled. Finally, Towers had come to the point. It was not safe, so he said, to leave the control of the world in political hands. Power must be held by a scientifically selected group. In short, his patrol. Johnny was startled, rather shocked. What an abstract idea, sure, but Towers' notion sounded plausible. The League of Nations had folded up. What would keep the United Nations from breaking up too, and thus leading to another world war? And you know how bad such a war would be, Johnny. And Johnny agreed. Towers said he was glad that Johnny got the point. The senior bomb officer could handle the work, but it was better to have both specialists. And Johnny sat up with a jerk. Wait, you're going to do something about it? He had thought the exec was just talking, but Towers smiled. "We're not politicians, Johnny. We don't just talk, we act." Johnny said, "When does this start?" Towers flipped a switch. Johnny was startled to hear his own voice, then identified the recorded conversation as having taken place in the junior officer's mess room. A political argument, he remembered, which he had walked out on. A good thing, too, but being spied on annoyed him. Towers switched it off. "We have acted. We know who is safe and who isn't. Take Kelly." He waved at the loudspeaker. "Kelly is politically unreliable. You noticed he wasn't at breakfast. Huh? I thought he was on watch. Kelly's watch standing days are over. Relax, he's not hurting." Johnny thought this over. Which list am I on? Safe or unsafe? Your name has a question mark after it, Johnny. But I have said all along that you could be depended on. You won't make me a liar, Johnny. Dahlquist didn't answer. Towers said sharply, Come now. What do you think of it? Speak up. Well, if you ask me, you've bitten off more than you can chew. Well, it's true the moon base controls the Earth. The moon base itself is a sitting duck for a ship. One bomb and bluey. Towers picked up a message for him and handed it over. It read, "Have you cleaned your laundry, Zach?" That, you see, is code. It means every bomb in the Tigvi has been put out of commission. I have reports from every ship we need to worry about. Think it over and see me after lunch, will you? Major Morgan needs your help right away to change the control frequencies on the bombs. Control frequencies? Naturally. We don't want the bombs jammed before they reach their targets. What? You said the idea was to prevent war. Towers brushed it aside. There won't be a war, Johnny. Just a psychological demonstration. An unimportant town or two. A little bloodletting to save an all-out war. Simple arithmetic. He put a hand on Johnny's shoulder. You aren't squeamish, are you, Johnny? Or you wouldn't be a bomb officer, would you? Think of it as a surgical operation and think of your family. Johnny Dahlquist had been thinking of his family. Please, sir, I want to see the commanding officer. Towers frowned. Oh, the Commodore is not available. As you know, I speak for him now. See me again, won't you, after lunch? The Commodore was decidedly not available. The Commodore was dead. And Johnny knew that. So, Dahlquist walked back to the mess room, bought cigarettes, sat down and had a smoke. He got up, crushed out the butt, and headed for the base's west airlock. There he got into his spacesuit and went to the lockmaster. Open her up, Smitty. The Marine looked surprised. Can't let anyone out of the surface without word from the Colonel. Hadn't you heard? Oh yeah, just give me your order book. Dahlquist took it, wrote a pass for himself, and signed it, by direction of Colonel Towers, and he added, better call the executive officer and check it. The lockmaster read it and stuck the book in his pocket. Oh, no, Lieutenant, your word's good. Yeah, hate to disturb the executive officer, eh? I don't blame you. He stepped in, closed the inner door, and waited for the air to be sucked out. Out of the moon's surface, he blinked at the light, and he hurried to the track rocket terminus. A car was waiting. He squeezed in. He pulled down the hood and punched the starting button. The rocket car flung itself at hills, dived through the cane, and a plane studded with projectile rockets like candles on a cake. Quickly it dived into a second tunnel through more hills. There was a stomach-wrenching deceleration, and the car stopped at the underground atom bomb armory. As Dahlquist climbed out, he switched on his walkie-talkie. The spacesuited guard at the entrance came to port arms, and Dahlquist said, "Morning, Lopez," and walked by him to the airlock, and he pulled it open. The guard motioned him back. Hey, nobody goes in without executive officer say-so. And he lifted his gun, fumbled it in his pouch, and got out a paper. Read it, Lieutenant. Dahlquist waved it away. I drafted that order myself. You read it. You misinterpreted it. I don't see how, Lieutenant. Dahlquist snatched the paper, glanced at it, and pointed to a line. See? Except persons specifically designated by the executive officer, that's the bomb officer, Major Morgan, and me. The guard looked worried, and Dahlquist said, Look up specifically designated. It's under bomb room security procedure. For any standing orders, don't tell me you left it in the barracks. No, sir, I've got 'em. The guard reached into his pouch, and Dahlquist gave him. Back the sheets. The guard took it, hesitated, then leaned his weapon against his ship, shifted the paper to his left hand, and dug into his pouch with his right. Dahlquist grabbed the gun, shoved it between the guard's legs and jerked. He threw the weapon away and ducked into the airlock. As he slammed the door, he saw the guard struggling to his feet and reaching for his sidearm. He dogged the outer door shut and felt a tingle in his fingers as the slug struck the door. He flung himself at the inner door, jerked the spill lever, rushed back to the outer door, and hung his weight on the handle. At once, he could feel it stir. The guard was lifting up, you see, and the lieutenant was pulling down, with only his low moon weight to anchor him. The slowly handle raised before his eyes, and air from the bomb room rushed into the lock through the spill valve. Doc Woost felt his suit settle on his body as the pressure in the lock began to equal the pressure in the suit. He quit straining and let the guard raise the handle. It didn't matter. 13 tons of air pressure now held the door closed. He latched open the inner door to the bomb room so that it could be not swung shut. As long as it was open, the airlock could not operate, and no one could enter. Before him, in the room, one for each projectile rocket, were the atom bombs, spaced in rows far enough apart to defeat any faint possibility of spontaneous chain reaction. They were the deadliest things in the known universe, but they were his babies. He had placed himself between them and anyone who would misuse them. But now that he was here, he had no plan to use his temporary advantage. The speaker on the wall sputtered into his life.
Hey, Lieutenant! What's going on in there? You gone crazy?
And Dahlquist didn't answer. Let Lopez stay confused. It would take him that much longer to make up his mind what to do. And Johnny Dahlquist needed as many minutes as he could squeeze. Lopez went on protesting. Finally, he shut up. Johnny had followed a blind urge to not let the bombs, his bombs, but used for demonstrations on important towns. But what to do next? Well, Towers couldn't get through the lock. Johnny would sit tight until, hell froze over. Don't kid yourself, John Ezra. Towers could get in. Some high explosive against the outer door. Then the air would whoosh out. Our boy Johnny would drown in blood from his burst lungs, and the bombs would be sitting there, unhurt. They were built to stand the jump from moon to Earth. Vacuum would not hurt them at all. He decided to stay in a spacesuit. Explosive decompression didn't appeal to him. Come to think of it, death from old age was his choice. Or they could drill a hole, let out the air, and open the door without wrecking the lock. Or Towers might even have a new airlock built outside the old. Not likely, Johnny thought. A coup d'etat depends on speed. Towers was most likely to take the quickest way, blasting, and Lopez was probably calling the base right now. 15 minutes for Towers to suit up and get here. Maybe a short time, then whoosh, the whole party's over. 15 minutes? In 15 minutes, the bombs might fall back into the hands of the conspirators. In 15 minutes, he must make the bombs unusable. An atom bomb is just 2 or more pieces of fissionable metal, such as plutonium. Separated, they are no more explosive than a pound of butter. Slapped together, they explode. The complications lie in the gadgets and circuits and gun used to slap them together in the exact way, at the exact time, and the place required. These circuits, the bomb's brain, are easily destroyed, but the bomb itself is hard to destroy because of its very simplicity. Johnny decided to smash the brains, and quickly. The only tools at hand were simple ones used in handling the bombs. Aside from the Geiger counter, the speaker on the walkie-talkie circuit, a television rig on the base, and the bombs themselves. That room was bare. A bomb to be worked on was taken elsewhere, not through fear of explosion, but to reduce radiation exposure for personnel. The radioactive material in a bomb is buried in a tamper in these bombs. Gold, Gold stops alpha, beta, and much of the deadly gamma radiation, but not the neutrons. The slippery, poisonous neutrons which plutonium gives off had to escape, or a chain reaction explosion would result. The room was bathed in an invisible, almost undetectable rain of neutrons. The place was, well, it was unhealthy, and regulations called for staying in it as short a time as possible. And the Geiger counter clicked off in the background. Radiation, cosmic rays, the trace of radioactivity in the moon's crust, and secondary radioactivity set up all through the room by neutrons. Free neutrons to that nasty trade of infecting what they strike, making it radioactive, whether it be concrete or a human body. In time, the room would have to be abandoned. And Dahlquist twisted a knob on the Geiger counter. The instrument stopped clicking. He had used a suppressor circuit to cut out noise on the background radiation at the level then present. It reminded him uncomfortably of the danger of staying here. He took out the radiation exposure film all radiation personnel carry. It was a direct response type and had been fresh when he arrived. The most sensitive end was faintly darkened already. Halfway down the film, a red line crossed it. Theoretically, if the wearer was exposed to enough radioactivity in a week to darken the film to that line, he was, as Johnny remembered, a dead duck. Off came the cumbersome spacesuit. What he needed was speed. Do the job and surrender. Better to be a prisoner than to linger in a place as hot as this. He grabbed a ball hammer from the tool rack and got busy, pausing only to switch off the television pickup. The first bomb bothered him. He started to smash the cover plate of the brain, then stopped. He nerved himself and swung. Glass tinkled, metal creaked. His moon changed, and he began to feel a shameful pleasure in the destruction. He pushed on with enthusiasm, swinging, smashing, destroying. So intent was he that he did not at first hear his name called. Dahlquist, answer me. Are you there? He wiped sweat and looked at the TV screen. The tower's perturbed features stared out. And Johnny was shocked to find that he was wrecked only 6 of the bombs. Was he going to be caught before he could finish? Oh no, he had to finish. Stall, son, stall. Yes, Colonel, you called me? Oh, I certainly did. What's the meaning of this? No, I'm sorry, Colonel. Turn on your pickup, Johnny. I can't see you. What's with that noise? The pickup's on. It must be out of order. That noise, it's to tell the truth, Colonel, I was fixing things so that nobody could get in here. I'm going to assume that you are sick and send you to the medical officer, but I want you to come out of there right away. That's an order, Johnny. Johnny answered slowly. I can't just yet, Colonel. I came here to make up my mind, and I haven't quite made it up yet. You said to see you after lunch. I meant you to stay in your quarters. Yes, sir, but I thought I ought to stand watch on the bombs in case I decided you were wrong. That's not for you to decide, Johnny. I'm your superior officer. And you were sworn to obey me. Yes, sir. This was wasting time. The old fox might have a squad on the way now. But I swore to keep the peace, too. You come out here and talk it over with me. I don't want to do the wrong thing. And Tower smiled. That's a good idea, Johnny. You wait right there. I'm sure you'll see the light. He switched off. There, said Johnny. I hope you're convinced that I'm a half-wit, you slimy mistake. He picked up the hammer, ready to use the minutes gained. He stopped almost at once. It dawned on him that wrecking the brains was not enough. There were no sparse brains, but there was a well-stocked electronics shop. Morgan could jury-rig control circuits for the bombs. Why, he could save himself. Not a neat job, but one that would work. He would have to wreck the bombs themselves. And then, in the next 10 minutes. But a bomb was a solid chunk of metal, encased in heavy tamper, all tied in with a big steel gun. It couldn't be done. Not in 10 minutes. Of course, there was one way. He knew the control circuits. He also knew how to beat them. Take this bomb. If he took out the safety bar, unhooked the proximity circuit, shortened the delay circuit, and cut in the arming circuit by hand, then unscrewed that and reached in there, he could, with just a long stiff wire, set the bomb off, blowing the other bombs in the valley itself to Kingdom Come. And also Johnny Dahlquist. But that was the rub. And all this time he was doing what he had thought out, up to the step of actually setting off the bomb. Ready to go, the bomb seemed to threaten as if crouching to spring, and he stood up sweating. He wondered if he had the courage. He did not want to funk, and hoped that he would. He dug into his jacket and took out a picture of Edith and the baby. Honey, if I get out of this, I'll never try to beat a red light. And he kissed the picture and put it back, and there was nothing to do but wait. But what was keeping Towers? Johnny wanted to make sure that Towers was in blast range. What a joke on the jerk. Me sitting here ready to throw the switch on him. The idea tickled him. It led to a better. Why blow himself up alive? There was another way to rake it. A dead man control. Jigger up some way so that the last step, the one last set of the bomb, would not happen as long as he kept his hands on a switch or a lever or something. That if they blew open the door, shot him or anything, up goes the balloon. And better still, if he could hold them off with the threat of it, sooner or later he would come, and Johnny was sure that most of the patrol was not in stinking conspiracy. And then Johnny comes marching home. What a reunion. He'd resign and get a teaching job. He stood his watch, and all the while, he was working. Electrical? No, too little time. Make it a simple mechanical linkage. He had doped out, but had hardly begun to build it when the loudspeaker called him again. Johnny? That you, Colonel? He kept his hands busy. Let me in. Well, now, Colonel, that wasn't in the agreement. Where in blue blazes was something to use a long lever? I'll come in alone, Johnny. I give you my word. We'll talk face to face. His word. We can talk over the speaker, Colonel. Hey, that was it, a yardstick hanging on the tool rack. Johnny, I'm warning you. You let me in, or I'll blow the door off. A wire, he needed a wire, fairly long and stiff, and he tore the antenna from his suit. You wouldn't do that, Colonel. It would ruin the bombs. Vacuum won't hurt the bombs. Quit stalling. Better check with Major Morgan. Vacuum won't hurt them. Explosive decompression would wreck every circuit. The Colonel was not a bomb specialist. He shut up for several minutes, and Johnny went on working. Dahlquist, that was a clumsy little lie. I checked with Morgan. You have 60 seconds to get into your suit. If you aren't already, I'm blasting that door. No, you won't. You ever hear of a dead man's switch, Colonel? Now for a counterweight and a sling. Huh? What do you mean? I've rigged number 17 to set off by hand, but I put in a gimmick. It won't blow while I hang on to a strap I've got in my hand. But if anything happens to me, up she goes. You're about 15 feet from the blast center. Think it over. There was a short silence. I don't believe you. No. Ask Morgan. He'll believe me. He can inspect it over the TV pickup. Johnny lashed the belt of his spacesuit to the end of the yardstick. You said the pickup was out of order, so I lied. This time I'll prove it. Have Morgan call me. Presently, Major Morgan's face appeared. Lieutenant Dahlquist. Wait a sec. With great care, Dahlquist made one last connection while holding down the end of the yardstick. Still careful, he shifted his grip to the belt, sat down on the floor, stretched an arm, and switched on the TV pickup. Can you see me? I see you. What is this nonsense? It's a little surprise I whipped up. And he explained it. What circuits he had cut out, what ones had been shorted, just how the jerry-rigged mechanical sequence fitted in, and Morgan nodded. But you're bluffing, Dahlquist. I feel sure that you haven't disconnected the K circuit. You don't have the guts to blow yourself up. I sure haven't. But that's the beauty of it, Morgan. It can't go off so long as I'm alive. If your greasy boss, ex-Colonel Towers, blasts the door, then I'm dead. And the bomb goes off. And it won't matter to me, but it will to him. Better tell him. He switched off, and Towers came on over the speaker shortly. Dahlquist? I hear you. There's no need to throw your life away. Come out, and you will be retired on full pay. You can go home to your family. That's a promise. You keep my family out of this. Think of them. Go back to your hole. I feel a need to scratch, and this whole shebang might just explode in your lap. Johnny sat up with a start. He had dozed. His hand hadn't let go of the sling, but he had the shakes when he thought about it. Maybe he should disarm the bomb, depend on their daring to dig him out. But Towers' neck was already in hock for treason. Towers might risk it. If he did and the bomb were disarmed, Johnny would be dead, and Towers would have the bombs. No, he has gone this far. He wouldn't let his baby girl down now. Wouldn't let her grow up in a dictatorship just to get some sleep. He heard the Geiger counter clicking and remembered having used the suppressor circuit, and the radioactivity in the room must be increasing. Perhaps from scattering the brain circuits, the circuits were sure to be infected. They had lived too long, too close to plutonium, and he dug out his film, and the dark area was spreading toward the red line. He put it back and said, "Pal, better break this deadlock or you are going to shine like a watch dial." It was a figure of speech. Infected animal tissue does not glow. It simply dies. Slowly. And the TV screen lit up, and Towers' face appeared. "Dahlquist, I want to talk to you. Go fly a kite. Let's admit you have us, shall we say, inconvenienced." Inconvenienced? I've got you stopped. For a moment. I'm arranging to get more bombs. Liar. But you are slowing us up. I will give you that, Johnny. I have a proposition. I'm not interested. Wait. When this is over, I will be chief of the world government. If you cooperate, even now, I will make you the administrative head. Don't be stupid. What do you gain by dying? Towers, what a prime stinker you are. You spoke in my family. I'd rather see them dead than living under a 2-bit Napoleon like you. Now go away. I've got something to think about. And Towers switched off. and Johnny got out his film again. It seemed no darker, but it reminded him forcibly that time was running out. He was hungry and thirsty, and he could not stay awake forever. It took 4 days to get a ship up from Earth. He could not expect to rescue anytime soon. He wouldn't last 4 days. Once the darkening spread past the red line, he was a goner. His only chance was to wreck the bombs beyond repair and out before that film got much darker. He thought about ways, then got busy. He hung a weight on the sling, tied a line to it. If towers blasted the door, he hoped to jerk the rig loose before he died. There was a simple though arduous way to wreck the bombs beyond any capacity of moon base to repair them. The heart of each was 2 hemispheres of plutonium. Their flat surface polished smooth to permit perfect contact when slapped together. Anything less would prevent the chain reaction on which atomic explosions depend. Johnny started taking apart one of the bombs. He had to bash off 4 lugs, then break the glass envelope around the inner assembly. Aside from that bomb, came apart easily. At last, he had in front of them 2 gleaming, mirror-perfect half-globes. A blow with the hammer, and one was no longer perfect. Another blow, and a second cracked like glass. He had tapped his crystalline structure just right. And hours later, dead tired, he went back to the armed bomb, forcing himself to steady down, and with extreme care he disarmed it. And shortly its silver hemispheres were useless. There was no longer a usable bomb in the room, but huge fortunes and the most valuable, most poisonous, and most deadly metal in the world were spread around the floor. Johnny looked at the deadly stuff. Into your suit. And out of here, son. I wonder what Towers would say. He walked toward the rack, intending to hang up the hammer, and as he passed, the Geiger counter chattered wildly. Plutonium hardly affects a Geiger counter. Secondary infection from plutonium does. And Johnny looked at the hammer, then held it closer to the Geiger counter, and the counter screamed. Johnny tossed it hastily away and started back toward his suit. And he passed the counter, it chattered again, and he stopped short. He pushed one hand close to the counter. Its clicking picked up to a steady roar. Without moving, he reached into his pocket and took out his exposure film. Dead black, from end to end. Plutonium taken into the body moves quickly to bone and marrow. Nothing can be done, the victim's finished. Neutrons from it smash through the body, ionizing tissue, transmuting atoms into radioactive isotopes, destroying, killing. The fatal dose is unbelievably small. A mass a tenth the size of a grain, a table of salt, and more than enough. A dose small enough to enter through the tiniest scratch. During the historic Manhattan Project, immediate high amputation was considered the only possible first aid measure. Johnny knew all this, but it no longer disturbed him. He sat on the floor, smoking a hoarded cigarette and thinking. The event of his long watch rang through his mind, and he blew a puff of smoke at the Geiger counter and smiled without humor to hear it chatter more loudly. But now even his breath was hot, carbon-14, exhaled from his bloodstream as carbon dioxide. It didn't matter. There was no longer any point in surrendering, nor would he give Towers the satisfaction. He would finish out this watch, right here. Besides, by keeping up the bluff that one bomb was ready to blow, he could stop them from capturing the raw material from which bombs were made. That might be important in the long run. And he accepted without surprise the fact that he was not unhappy. There was a sweetness about having no further worries of any sort. He didn't hurt. He wasn't uncomfortable. He was no longer even hungry. Physically, he still felt fine. His mind was at peace. He was dead, and he knew he was dead. For a long time, he was able to walk and breathe and see and feel. He wasn't even lonesome. He wasn't alone. There were comrades with him, the boy with his finger in the dike. Colonel Bowie, too ill to move, but insisting that he be carried across the line. The dying captain on the Chesapeake, still with deathless challenge on his lips. Roger Young peering into the gloom. And they gathered about him in the dusky bomb room. And of course there was Edith. She was the only one he was aware of. Johnny wished that he could see her face more clearly. Was she angry or proud or happy? Proud though unhappy. He could see her now. Even feel her hand. He held very still. Presently his cigarette burned down to its fingers. He took a final puff and blew it at the Geiger counter and put it out. It was his last, and he gathered several butts and fashioned a roll-your-own with a bit of paper found in his pocket. He lit it carefully and settled back to wait for Edith to show up again. And when she did, he was very happy. And when they found him, he was still propped against the bomb case. The last of his salvaged cigarettes cold at his side when the speaker called out again.
Johnny, can you hear me? This is Kelly. It's all over. The Lafayette landed and Towers blew his brains out.
Johnny, answer me. When they opened the outer door, the first man in carried a Geiger counter in front of him and the end of a long pole, and he stopped at the threshold and backed out hastily. Hey, Chief. Better get some more handling equipment and a lead coffin. 4 days it took the little ship and her escort to reach Earth. 4 days while all of Earth's people waited her arrival. For 98 hours, all commercial programs were of television. Instead, there was an endless dirge. The Dead March Tram's Soul, the Valhalla theme, Going Home, the patrol's own landing orbit. The 9 ships landed at Chicago port. A drone tractor removed the casket from the small ship, and the ship was then refueled and blasted off in an escape trajectory, thrown away into outer space, never again to be used for a lesser purpose. The tractor progressed to Illinois, where Lieutenant Dahlquist had been born while the dirge continued. There, it placed the casket on a pedestal, inside a barrier marking the distance of safe approach. Space Marines, arms reversed and heads bowed, stood guard around it, and the crowd stayed outside the circle. And still the dirge continued. When enough time had passed, long after the heaped flowers had withered, the lead casket was enclosed in marble, just as you can see it today.